Before we get started today, I want to say thank you for every single like, comment, recommendation, and a very special thank you to my listener support group. If you like what we do here at Off the Deep End Podcast, please consider checking out the listener support tab on our channel's anchor link. Without you, we would not be able to continue the great work we're doing with these conversations, breaking down boundaries and helping heal each other by sharing our stories, our trials, our tribulations, and how we process them. Let's jump straight into this episode.
Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Off the Deep End Podcast. I'm joined today by the man, the myth, Smith & Wesson himself, Snohomish County Sheriff, Adam Fortney. Thank you so much for your time, my brother.
Absolutely. I am happy to be here today.
Excellent. Well, why don't we get into the nitty and the gritty, my favorite part, because it really does lay the foundation for who our guests are on this podcast. So why don't you tell me a little bit about your childhood?
Wow, it's going back a ways, but yeah, I'm game if you are. So, born and raised in Snohomish County. Born in Northwest Hospital in Seattle, but I moved here when I was like a couple months old or something like that. So I've been here my whole life is my point. So I grew up in South Snohomish County in the town of Briar. Small town, suburban town, and spent Briar Elementary, Briar Terrace Middle School. I split my high school years. 2 at Terrace. I graduated from Linwood, the old Linwood that is no longer there.
Oh my goodness! So you probably know my mom, Barb Wallace. So no.
Oh my goodness. But I can remember back in the day when even Alderwood Mall wasn't there. It was just an empty field. So as I was a child growing up. So that was kind of my growing up. And I know we're going to maybe talk about youth later in this podcast, so I don't want to go down that road now. But we grew up, I was probably one of the last generations growing up without cell phones or anything else. So, we'd go out and we'd play in the neighborhood all day. We'd come back when it got dark out maybe. There was good and bad to that as well. But I had a pretty good upbringing. And then, I had some things happen that are probably not so outside the norm. They're not unique to me, where my parents got divorced and I had 3 siblings, so there was 4 of us in the house and my 2 parents. Really normal, regular, I would say traditional upbringing up until that divorce. And like a lot of families in America, it kind of threw us for a loop, and it kind of messed me up for a little while, where I had an older brother and older sister. Then there was a large gap, and then it was me and my little brother. And so me and my little brother, like we were together all the time, fought a lot, stuff like that. But that kind of put my life on a different path than kind of what it was set up for initially. And what I mean by that is it's tough. My mom ended up moving to a different location and took my little brother with her. I opted. They gave me the choice because I was a teenager at the time. I said, I'm going to stay with my dad because I kind of felt bad, right? Probably one of the worst decisions I've made in my life, separating from my brother. We still knew him and everything, but when you're dividing a house, that was tough on me. That was really tough.
It's a hard decision to make as a child. I definitely have some similarities with that as well. It's not talked about enough. Broken households can create broken children, and I think it's essential to have. Some people say it takes a village. I really do think there's a lot of truth to that, and a lot of stories. We all have a need to be loved. We all have a need to be supported and to be shown a path, to be led in a certain direction, so that we can find out who our identity is, and figure out who. What do I want to be when I grow up? I knew when I was a kid, the only thing I wanted to be is in law enforcement. And
nice.
I'm not in law enforcement right now, but
never say never.
The future might be looking bright, so we'll see.
Cool, yeah, and all the stuff you just said about figuring out your path and being led, having kind of mentors, and I figured out on my own, dude. I did. I was on my own, basically. And I mean, with all due respect to my parents, that's just how it was. In a divorced household, my dad worked all the time. I'd come home from school, there was no one around. I was kind of figuring out life on my own, and it wasn't pretty, to be honest with you. I did some stupid stuff. I really did. And so there are... when I was reaching, it was very important to me that I graduated high school, but I want to say I didn't really care about school. And I don't say that. I'm not proud of that. You asked me a question, I'm going to give you a straight answer. I just didn't care. School did not come difficult to me to where I would show up to the extent that I had to, and I would get halfway decent grades, and I knew I wanted to graduate because that was what would catapult me to whatever. I knew I had to check kind of that box to do what I want to do. And then there's a couple things that changed the course of my life. Is that I had a child in high school prior to graduation, and so And I was being an idiot. I was doing stupid stuff. And so two things that changed my life. My family history is that of the United States Navy. I think we share that in common. My dad served, my brother served, and my brother served at a time when I was 12, 13, 14 at the time in the mid 80s. And so I was able to watch my brother and what he was able to do. And then all of a sudden I was going to be a dad at 18 years old. And I'm like, I either square myself away or I am in for a world of hurt the next several years of my life. And so a couple things saved my life. At 17, again, I was still living with my dad. At 17, you can't sign up in the United States military, but you can if your parents sign your life away. Yeah. So I asked my dad to come down the Navy recruiter at Alderwood Mall, and I said, this is my path. This is what I want to do. And he's like, it wasn't even he didn't need to think about it. He couldn't get there fast enough, to tell you the truth. So he was all for it. And so he signed on that dotted line, and that was the first thing that geared my path. The second thing was having a son. So I figured out, you know what? I'm going to take being this dad thing, even though I'm 18, have no idea what I'm doing. I was going to take that really seriously in life. And I think those two things, joining the military and having a kid at a young age, is probably what changed the trajectory that my life was on at the time.
Wow.
Yes.
All my listeners know that there's a lot of similarity between our two stories.
Okay.
I graduated Lebanon High School, signed up at the Alderwood
I didn't know that.
recruiting office, both in the Navy. I think that there's so much that we can find. We get rid of these lines that divide us as human beings.
Yeah.
Our skin color, our religion, our political views. There's nothing political about loving another human being or to be excited about life. Being a father is an essential role in a child's life. We both know that. I wish that everybody who found out that they were going to, have a child of their own was taken as seriously as you, because you changed your entire life. Signing up for the military, a lot of people make it, a hair trigger decision kind of thing. And I think there's a lot of something lying underneath the surface when it comes to people signing up off of a gut instinct of I need to change something, or even if they are passionate about it, it's it's going to change your life. It's a new uncharted territory. It's dark waters. You never know what's out there.
Yeah, and the cool thing about the military is, being literally 17, 18 years old, no life experience, and you're thrown into. I went to boot camp in San Diego. You're thrown into a room. Our company was 60 or 70 people. I'm much older than you, so I'm going back by memory here. And it's from people. But the cool thing that people miss, I think, about the military is they're from all walks of life. Yeah. Like you mentioned, just love your fellow human being, right? Well, that you kind of learn that in the military, and I think that's missed. And what I mean by that is they force you to work together and get along. You don't have a choice not to get along when you join the United States military, no matter what branch it may be. And I just so happen, I'm fast forwarding a lot of years now, but I got a son that just graduated boot camp with the United States Marines just late last year. So now I'm watching him in this path, and the friends that he is making, that if he stayed here, he would have never had at least that diverse a friend group, if you will. So I'm watching him take this path now, and I'm like, man, that's pretty cool, And the lessons that he's learning, I am you can probably tell by the way I'm talking, I'm a fan of young men and young women early on in life getting the opportunity to serve in the military. I don't push people towards that way. Let's see, two of my kids have done it. I still got a daughter that's active duty Army Guard over in Yakima. She was deployed to Syria and all that kind of stuff. So we have a proud tradition of all branches of the military in my family and my wife's family. But I think it's a great start for a young person in life. If anything, you learn how to take care of yourself, show up to work in time, and do your job. Because if you don't do those three things in the military, you're probably going to get a little bit of trouble.
Yes, indeed. And I love that your family is serving, man. First off, thank you for your service. Thank you for their service, and for your daughter's continued service. It is astronomical that we have human beings at this day and age signing up for the military. We know it's a time where it's not normal for the youth to be inspired to do something that completely absolves themselves of having great finances, right? Mm-hmm. The military is seriously underpaid. I don't think that's anything that's a secret. It's essential that we think about those who are deployed. Red Friday, remembering everyone that is deployed, thanking somebody for their service, looking out for a person in uniform at the airport, just talking to them. It might make a huge difference. I know that a lot of times I was traveling home to deal with some unfortunate situation with loss and family, or others, and I always try to go out of my way to
That's
to
cool.
acknowledge that, because it's huge when you have your son who just graduated from the Marine Corps boot camp last year. That is huge, because he's going to pave the way for our future, and he's going to be the one who protects our freedoms when there isn't going to be a time, and he's going to be called to do that.
Yeah, and you give up a lot too. I mean, when you sign on that dotted line, they can pretty much do what they want as long as whether it's a 4-year enlistment or whatever. That's the cool thing about military service is y'all have different jobs and we do different things. The different branches do different things and have different roles and responsibilities. But y'all signed that line. Everybody who served did and said, yes, I will go. Do with me as you will, basically, right? And I think that's a good thing, and it's a good thing to learn at a young age in life. I've never met someone in the military. We probably all have different experiences. I haven't met someone that like truly regretted their time. You know, there's good times and bad times. Don't get me wrong; it is not always easy. But looking back, I am very glad I started out my young life that way. And you mentioned Red Fridays, and remember everyone deployed. We actually instituted that at the sheriff's office. So we're very kind of strict on colors that you can wear to work, and red is not one of them. But on Fridays at the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office, you can now wear a red T-shirt under your uniform because of that.
I love it. I have so many of my friends that have been forward deployed. So many of them who have given up so much of their life. They let go of everything back home and focus on that. And I can't go without saying the military families. They definitely hold a lot of the sacrifice portion of when someone serves. I do a portion on my podcast called Service Sacrifice where we talk about veteran stories and share. And there's so much that goes into the family back home and the mantle that they wear. So I know that your family is holding on to a great burden that is not acknowledged as much as I wish it was. So I'm going to go ahead and acknowledge it. Thank you for your family's sacrifice while your loved ones are serving. It's huge.
Absolutely, you bet.
Well, what was one of your favorite takeaways from the Navy?
So I'll be honest, I had it pretty good in the military. I did. So my dad served on the USS Oklahoma City, and he was SEATIME his entire 4 years. My brother Rob was AE, he's so avionics electrician. He was in a squadron and did 3 Westpacks. He ended up re-upping, so he did 6 years total. Spent a lot of time in the Philippines and all that kind of stuff. So I see all this and hear the stories from my dad and my brother growing up. And then when I was 12 years old, my brother was returning from Westpac on the USS Kitty Hawk. They stop in Hawaii before they get to the port of San Diego, right? Well, if you've been around the military or the Navy, they have these things called Tiger Cruises, where your family members can join you at the end of a cruise. And then my parents basically signed me up for that when I was 12, and they flew me to Hawaii. My brother picks me up, and I got to spend the next 7 days on the USS Kitty Hawk with him as a 12-year-old. So I am watching things from the aircraft carrier. I'm watching flight operations and everything, and I'm with my brother for the whole 7 days. And so that was kind of my introduction to it, and that kind of stuck with me. You know, that really, when you're young, it plants a seed in your head a little bit, and that's kind of what that did for me. So I was an AT. I saw all of this and had a little bit of a participation as a younger kid, and then so I joined the Navy to see the world, right? I'm ready. Let's go. And so I go to San Diego for boot camp, which is very typical for West Coast, and then my rate was AT. So avionics, electronics technician, and all the schooling at the time was just north of Memphis, Tennessee. So you join the Navy, you're thinking you're going to be on these cruises on these ships, and I spend the first year, almost a year, a little less than a year, in Memphis, Tennessee, basically, Millington, Tennessee, just north of there. And then, at the end of your schooling, they prep you for your orders, and usually a few weeks out, you get your permanent duty station. Guess where mine was? Oak Harbor, Washington. Naval Air Station, Woodby Island. They shipped me right back home. And that's where I pretty much did the remainder of my time. We did short detachments in the continental U.S. quite a bit, but my main station was NAS Woodby Island. I loved working around the jets. It was my thing. I was on the flight line almost the whole time. We did what we call the line shop. We were kind of the grunts of the squadron, where you go and you're responsible for all kind of the dirty work of the squadron, I guess you will. And that's where everybody goes when you first get there, and then you go to your actual shops, whether you're like a mechanic, an electrician, or whatever. Kind of start in the line shack. I kind of did some extra time there. I thrived in it. I loved it. So it's a good start to a young person's life, and it really helped me out.
Excellent. So one thing that really stood out to me is this idea of serving. So obviously, you got into law enforcement at what time? What drove you, or should I say, what inspired you to continue your service after the military, which is quite an astounding thing to do?
So I get out of the military, and I have a few major things going on in my life at the time. I had 3 kids young by the time I got out of the military. Okay, so I'm 22 years old, 3 kids, and as I transition out of the Navy, I'm working basically for a plumbing company out of Seattle, doing service calls and things like that. I did that for 2 years in Western Washington. During this time, my first wife left. I kept the kids, so now I'm raising 3 kids on my own. Transitioning out of the Navy, it was a mess. I just bought a house. Anyway, so I kind of get settled from that. I had a lot of help from my mom, bless her, for helping me at the time, because that's very difficult to do on your own and work full time and try to raise a family. And so all of that was going on. And I worked out at the plumbing company Seattle for 2 years, and I knew in my heart it was a fantastic job, and I love working in the trades. I love working. I'm not real good at it, but I love the work. And I just knew, I didn't know. I think the good Lord put on my heart that wasn't what He wanted me to do for the next 30 to 40 years of my life. And I just had this, He put public safety on my heart. I can say that as a human being, because I can't point to you, Eddie, anything else in my life. I knew no cops. I have no cops in my family. I had no cops as friends. I did what everybody else does when they were behind me. I would get really nervous. Not so much because I'm doing anything wrong. I'm like, I don't want to get pulled over. I don't want a ticket, right? So my point is, no experience in the law enforcement realm whatsoever. I was not a cop in the Navy. I worked on jets, okay? So good Lord puts on my heart that, okay, and at the time, the mid-'90s were a completely different world than it is now.
Oh, yes.
We would have thousands of people show up to test for like 4 open spots at a police department, and you usually show up at a local high school and you have to pass your physical fitness, then you do a written. Some of those are real similar to this day, but the people who were joining, it was just very difficult to get in to public safety at the time. And I studied to the extent I could and all that kind of stuff. I did all the practice books that you could buy at the time. And really I had no idea what I was doing, but I felt I was on a path. And it's weird at the time because people would test for many different departments, and really your goal was just to get on somewhere. And then it's well known you can do what we call lateral after that and go to different departments. And so people just wanted to get on. I only tested for one department. That was the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office at the time. And again, not knowing anybody, I just felt it's what I wanted to do. It was my community. It was where I was from. And I did one test at the time, and I ended up getting picked up off that list. The first test and only test I ever took in the world of law enforcement. That's my path. It is a little bit unique, especially at the time of the mid-'90s when everybody was trying to get in. And man, I got to be honest, it has flown by ever since. It has been, they say that old adage where if you find something you're personally passionate about, and you can make a living at it, it's almost like you never go to work a day in your life. I look back and I kind of think that, not totally, because not every day in a patrol car is fun. I can tell you that. I'm not telling you every day was fun. I'm telling you I can look back. I am still personally passionate about the work I do, and I've absolutely loved it. So unique path, but I think I'm where I'm supposed to be. Yeah.
I think that's awesome. I don't know very many people who can say that they're thankful that they're on the path they are with their career. A lot of people get frustrated with their job,
yeah,
but they just don't seem to want to do anything about it. And I always encourage my friends, my family, people I come across, if you don't feel inspired every day to inspire others with your current career field, with your current job, or you don't like to teach somebody what you do, find something else.
Yeah.
Don't stop until you find you're on your path. Your path it's yours. Someone can't give it to you. They're not going to replace you tomorrow at your path. Your path is waiting for you, and all you have to do is kind of rise to the occasion in the moment, or fall to your level of training depending on what your career path is.
Yeah. And so it just kind of, I don't know, I worked hard, but kind of fell in my lap at the time. And, the cool thing about public safety is that, as in a large organization like ours, there's so many different jobs you can do within the same profession. And my thing was working the street. I've been in a marked car my entire career, and now I have an office job now. Granted, it's a little bit different. But when I worked the road, for 23 years, that's what I did. I worked night shift my entire time because that's what worked for me, and that is the work that I loved. I'd show up to work at 6 p.m. I'd get off at 6 a.m. The complete opposite of almost every human in Snohomish County. I thought that was cool. I loved it. So I love the people I work with. The only thing I wanted to do when I got in this profession was be a canine guy. That's all I want to do. And at the time, there was just no turnover in the canine unit. Guys would get in there, and at the sheriff's office, you can stay there as long as you want, unless you do something really wrong, right? And so people would get in there, and they'd work these dogs, and then they'd get another dog, and it'd go on and on. And so it took me 10 years, 3 different testing processes before I got into the canine unit, and then I stayed there for another 10 years. So that was kind of my path. Little bit unique to where that was my thing. But if it's not your thing, and like you want to go on to be a detective, all different things that you can do. We've got the SWAT team. You can ride in helicopters here. You can do. We got different kinds of boats you can do here. All search and rescue stuff. Those people in search and rescue are just amazing. They're fantastic people. So the cool thing about public safety, there's many different things you can do in one profession.
Wow. Well, that's definitely exciting because I have quite a few of my friends that are looking for other jobs, and I'm going to definitely encourage them to apply today.
Thank you. We appreciate your help with that.
Oh, yes. One of my friends, Jack, he wanted to ask me specifically, what is a normal day for you personally? There is no normal days in law enforcement. Just to put that out there, disclaimer. But what would a average day look like to you starting off?
You want as a deputy sheriff on the street? I'm assuming you don't want my days as an elected sheriff, right? Okay. You're right. It is different every single day, and that's kind of the cool thing about it. And it also brings with it some challenges, if you will, because let's face it, we're human beings, and we have challenges maybe on the home front. Maybe your day's not going so well. Well, you got to show up to work, and I'm not saying you got to put a smile on your face all the time, but you got to treat people with respect and dignity, no matter what mood you might be in, or no matter what just happened at home. So that's challenging over the years, and so a normal day for me, I'll talk about a graveyard shift. You drive into work. We take our patrol cars home here, so we kind of start from our driveway. We got to be in our geographical area when we start our shift, so you leave a little bit early, and then by the first half hour, as a sergeant running a patrol crew, we do have roll call almost every night. That's kind of a briefing time where we come in and kind of get on the same page. If there's pass down from day shift to night shift that's of importance, that's where we would cover that stuff. And then sometimes, and you got to be flexible in this world. There are some times, in different parts of the county, you might not get to roll call because they're just calls holding as soon as you get into service. So everything is different, and that's you got to be ready. We do a lot of training in law enforcement, all that type of thing, but you train for like the 1% of the time, and not 99% of the time. You're going to come to work, you're going to go to your calls, you're going to do your thing, but you got to train for the 1% of the time where it kind of goes downhill, or the critical incident calls, things like that, right? It's just, you can't pick the time and place when those come in law enforcement. You can't, there is no way to predict it. And so some people, that's a challenge to. I kind of thrived on that. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So everybody loved, we love going to the hot calls and things like that. Love being able to try to solve very difficult situations, So that's kind of your typical day. When people call into 911 for calls for service, and you're responsible on the other end as the call taker, you are asked to go out and solve a myriad of different things. Some things maybe, are the police still doing this these days? Why are we going to some of this stuff? That's been a conversation for me as the sheriff up here. But yeah, we go to stuff all day long, every day, and we don't get to pick the next call. You don't get to pick and choose. It's like you get dispatched to a call, here you go. Go figure out what you're supposed to do. So I love it.
It's like repairing the worst situation in another human being's life. And I talked with one of my buddies who is an EMT for a private company, so of course I'm not going to mention their company, but my buddy Jack, he wants to make the transition, but currently he's an EMT, says that he's showing up on the worst part of somebody's life. He's showing up to remove fluid out of a baby's lung and transfer them to a hospital, or this and that. And I don't want to go too far into detail with
Yeah.
it, but ultimately, how do you keep kind of clear your radar and decompress after a tough call going into your next one without having a buildup of emotion or bad attitude, or let your emotions spill over into somebody who's already at a heightened sense of emotions?
Yeah, that is, it's a very difficult thing to do. It is, because you have to keep your emotions in check in this job. And so, fortunately, through the course of my career, I think I've been fortunate in that aspect. And I don't know that I can point to you an exactly reason why. But yeah, we have to deal with things. And a lot of times, like you said, it's the most stressful or most emotional time of their life that we're responding to. We have to be empathetic in that situation. We have to be. There's a time and a place for a police officer or deputy sheriff to act, but we do more listening than anything. And I think you got to be a good listener. I'm big on telling my people that worked for me, treat everybody you come in contact with like you'd want to be treated in that situation. And it's not always easy to do because of the calls like you were describing. If you just came from a really emotional call and now you're going to this next thing, then the next thing you're going to is still the most important thing to that person who called 911. It might not be to you because you might be on the 10th call of your shift, been up and down emotionally, but you got to keep in perspective, it's the most important contact that person in the community will have with a person in uniform, and every contact we have is critical to the community member, and I guess developing that public trust and I don't know if reputation is the right word, but we have to put that kind of good face on, not fake it. You don't have to be fake, but you do have to be respectful and be empathetic to what people are going through in our community.
And I definitely can resonate with that, because when I show up to deal with the general public, which I have to do often with my current career field, I have to keep calm and composed while I'm having quite a different list of terms thrown at me, and sometimes physical objects as well.
Oh, geez.
So it's definitely interesting to see the perspective that's not very well portrayed by Hollywood, unfortunately, right? Hollywood does a lot of things, and we see with military movies, law enforcement, TV shows, hospital shows, that Hollywood does not do a good job, honestly, expressing what it's like to decompress after a tough call. And there have been quite a few in this region in the past. You never know when you're showing up to a deceased male near on the ground near the courthouse in the cold season, or responding to a domestic violence encounter, which is something that we've talked about quite a few times on this podcast as well. Domestic violence is something that it's a scourge of humanity. It's the worst part you can do is hurt another human being who just wants to be loved, right? What is one of the most important things you would want to say to somebody thinking about becoming a law enforcement officer, about having to walk into those calls? What type of mentality should they practice, if there is even a way to practice those situations?
The simplest way I can say that, and I can only answer quickly because I've lived this for 27 years now, is you've got to, you can't, it's not perfect every time, but you have to try to put yourself in those person's shoes, even if for a brief second, as you're walking up to the door to knock on it and kind of figure out what's going on, whether it's a family in crisis or anything. You have to, some of these problems and issues that we face as the police in society, they're not like minutes in the making. They're years, it's sometimes decades in the making, right? When you talk about family trauma. So I think we have to be good listeners. We have to be empathetic. There is a time and a place, like I said, where the police just gotta, hey, we're shutting this down. Everybody needs to be safe. Separate people. There's a time and a place for that, but you have to, it's a fine line. And I've always been big on just treating people with respect. Everybody says that. That's nothing new. Everybody's heard that. But it is difficult to live out on a day in and day out basis, going to these, highly emotional calls all the time. I always told my guys on my crew, look, I don't care if it's the mom and pop on a traffic stop that has slow rolled through a stop sign, or you're dealing with a hardcore convicted felon, right, that may or may not have just committed a crime. You don't know. We're there to investigate, right? Treat both of those with respect. And I have found that has treated me very well over my career.
Excellent. That's something I was hoping to hear, because we don't often hear that. A lot of times TV shows will put on a certain narrative, and I don't agree with narratives. I think that there's truth in every single situation, and that truth should always come to light. So there is a major issue that I think that is happening in this area, and I don't want to cover issues. I like to cover solutions. So let's talk about a solution. There is one of our brothers down there in this in the Thurston County area, Sheriff Sanders, and he is talking about the importance of vehicular assaults pretty often, or excuse me, vehicular pursuits, and the banning of them. Why do we, one, not have them allowed, and two, why do we need to have them?
Okay, so the answer to your first question is very clear and relatively simple. The state legislature got involved in our business and basically banned most police pursuits. I think that's an accurate description. They just finished their session and they adjusted the pursuit bill a little bit, but in my opinion, it's still way too restrictive. This is the importance of police pursuits. And I got to give a qualifying remark first as the sheriff. Nobody advocates for more pursuits. They are dangerous. They're dangerous to the community, and I take that all into consideration, okay? But what we cannot do as elected representatives in government, meaning the state legislature, all out ban pursuits for most crimes and signal to the criminal element ahead of time, no matter what you do, if you get to a car and you're willing to run from the police, you are going to get away. That is what's happening for the last 2.5 years in the state of Washington. And anybody who tells you different is not being completely truthful with you. Because I've been doing this 27 years, all of it on the street, and I have never seen anything like it in the last couple years in the state of Washington. Last I read, we were number 3 for auto thefts in the state of Washington. We are not the third largest state by population in the country. We should be nowhere near number 3. And we are specifically because the state banned police pursuits for one of the crimes that they banned it for was someone who steals your car. We find that car. We get behind them. They are simply allowed to drive away from us. And we have to stop. We cannot chase that person. It's against the law. And listen, and I want to be real careful. I'm kind of a middle-of-the-road sheriff when it comes to this. I'm for police pursuits in certain circumstances, okay? I think the days like when I started in the mid-'90s, early 2000s, where if you ran, we chased you. That was it. We would chase you. Those days are over, and they're not coming back. And I don't know a police executive that's not okay with that. We all acknowledge that, okay? But it's let's say a stolen car. That's a very common example we use. People say, oh, it's a property crime. Yeah, it's easy to say it's just a property crime if it's not your car being stolen and you don't need to go to work the next day, right? That's a big deal to that person, okay? And I think that accountability is important. When the crooks know that they can steal a car and the cops can't stop you, that's why we've seen vehicle thefts increase 88% in the state of Washington since they passed this law. It is absolutely crazy what's happening. Now, on the other side of that, do I think we're a large county in Snohomish County, 850,000 people. Boeing employs, I think, is 27,000 people last time I heard in various shifts, right? So when Boeing gets out at 3 p.m. or 4 p.m., whatever their shift is, and let's say a deputy sheriff gets behind a stolen car on 526, the Boeing freeway, and it's jam-packed. Probably not a good decision to chase that car because probably going to be a car crash, which means somebody had the potential of getting hurt. We never want that, right? But holy smokes, Eddie, if it's 3 a.m. and there's no one on the road and I got 3 deputies that just found the stolen car, isn't it okay in a civilized society to say, okay, the sergeant, we call them sergeants, our supervisors of the scene, we're going to see what happens here and give them a little bit of latitude and try to hold this person accountable for literally just committing a felony in progress in Snohomish County. We just can't send signals to the crooks where for all these crimes, you can just drive away from us. One more example, because this is critical. The crime of burglary in the state of Washington. That's when someone breaks into your house and steals your stuff. Okay, in my world, that is a big deal. Okay, I will never refer to that as a lower level crime. It's not. That is your home. That's your castle. That's where you raise your family. Right now in the state of Washington, the crooks know that if you burglarize your house and steal your stuff, they put the stuff that they just stole from you, hard-working citizen in Snohomish County, they put it in the car, they leave the scene, and a deputy sheriff or police officer gets behind that car, they get to drive away from us because of Washington state law right now. That's not okay with me. It's not okay. It's just not okay. Listen, I've said this often publicly. There are honorable arguments on each side of the pursuits. It is tough stuff. It is really tough stuff. But I think we did a decent job prior to all of this legislation of our sergeants, our supervisors. If we felt it was too dangerous at the time, the risk of the pursuit would outweigh the reward, which is catching the crook. We just canceled it. We call it terminate. Terminate that pursuit. We're not chasing that guy. We'll catch him another day.
It's not worth it. We got the plate. We'll figure it out.
We have to have discretion in our job. Anytime, our world, we do okay with some black and white rules. You got to in this day and age, right? But when it comes to the authority just to pursue a criminal, right, we have to have more discretion in what we do. We just have to.
I agree, and it's important to have the discussions. To pretend like it's not happening is a travesty. It's wrong. As elected officials are elected to lead, and they're not elected to inherently do things that harm the public. And public safety is obviously, it's the reason why you started. You started this over 23 years ago, just on the street. That's a lot of time wanting to do the right thing here, and it's egregious. It's an egregious act to invade someone else's home. It's happened to my neighbors. It's happened to me growing up. It's something that should be definitely pursued, as well as suspicion of DUIs, because I've lost friends. I've lost a brother to a DUI. So I think it's very important that we do pursue these. Speaking of the great work that's going on here in Snohomish County, there is this task force that I cannot stop seeing everywhere. The Violent Offender Task Force, VOTF for short. I really do admire the work they do, making sure our children are safe. It's something I'm passionate about. I talk about it pretty open and often as well. And I think it's essential that we have the Violent Offender Task Force. Can you tell me a little bit about their purpose? What is their why?
Yeah, in one sentence, I can sum it up. They go after the worst of the worst offenders that we have in our community and regionally. They don't just stay in Snohomish County. Our Violent Offender Task Force is a regional asset all over Western Washington. They go everywhere. Their focus is Snohomish County because they're housed here. But I am proud as the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office to host the Violent Offender Task Force. The work they do is absolutely incredible. We partner with the United States Marshal Service with the Violent Offender Task Force, and local police agencies participate in the form of detectives in the unit as well. The work they're so good at the work they do, you often don't hear about it because they're going after murderers all of the time, they rapists all of the time, and 99.9% of the time, they're so good at what they do, they catch them without even a use of force, without a car chase, without anything. And so I'm very proud of the work they do. Like I said, a lot of the work that you just don't hear about because it just gets resolved. You know, you hear about a murder suspect or something like that finally got caught or something. Not all the time. Most of the time, it's those guys that found that person and found what we all want in society, a peaceful resolution to maybe a high profile or a high chance of violence at that encounter. They are really good at what they do. I'm glad you mentioned them. I don't talk about them a whole lot, but I'm absolutely proud to because the work they do is awesome.
They are my heroes. I think there's nothing more important than people who are okay with very, very dangerous environments and work comfortably in it, no matter how uncomfortable it is.
Yeah.
You have to do it. So yeah, hats off to them, definitely.
Are you thinking about making a podcast? Spotify has a platform that lets you make one, and if I can figure it out, you definitely can too. You can create your own content all in one place for free with zero hangups and even earn money as soon as you get started. Spotify lets you record and edit episodes from your phone or computer so you can go mobile, just like I enjoy to do. My favorite thing about it is that you can create video episodes if you wish and upload them to wherever podcasts are heard. You can even set up subscriptions or, if you're like me, listener support options for listeners to help you grow. I 10 out of 10 recommend the Spotify for Podcasters app. Or, why don't you just step over to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started on your own podcast.
I don't think anybody can go on your Facebook, the Snohomish County Sheriff's Facebook at all, and not see the fact that there is this Lead the Way program. Please tell me what that is all about.
Yeah, I love talking about this. So, and you might have to stop me because I can go on for a while. Okay. So, if there's anything that I will look back on as my time as the elected sheriff, and that I will be most proud of, it is this without a doubt, to be honest with you. So, I kind of got to give the backstory though, so people understand where it came from. So, I took office in 2020, and I was the new guy, never been in politics before or anything like that, and I went from graveyard patrol sergeant to the elected sheriff, so I missed a couple steps along the way in the chain of command, right? And so I'm learning as I go. I have to face three things in 2020 right off the bat. The pandemic, which changed the world we lived in, right? George Floyd was killed in Minneapolis, which impacted what we do on a daily basis in public safety. It doesn't matter to me wherever I don't care about the political stuff. It changed the way we do business in public safety, and we had to take that seriously and deal with it. Deal with some of the stuff we had to historically. And then the state legislature is the third thing that got in our business and changed the way that we do our daily profession. So I had to deal with all of that stuff in my first year in office in 2020. My point is, in January of 2021, I am now starting my second year in office, so I've got 3 to go in this term. And in the world of politics these days, I don't think you can predict elections. You never know if I'm going to get elected. I don't know. I just don't know. Western Washington politics are crazy. All right. And so I figured, okay, I got 3 years left. One thing I learned as the sheriff, I have a lot of authority and resources at my disposal. And I take that real seriously because we're taxpayer funded. And, community service is big deal to me as a human being. Not every sheriff's a little bit different. To me, it's very important. I think most people would probably say that in this position, and in this profession for that matter. But I wanted to give back to the community in a form of as my role as sheriff. And so I actually, we're in my office now. I got my big whiteboard here. This Lead the Way program started just as bullet points, thoughts. A lot of times when I get thoughts in my head, I got to put them on paper somewhere. So I use this whiteboard. And so I have a bunch of bullet points. I researched what some other people were doing in the country, found some programs, but it just wasn't exactly what I wanted. And so I am personally passionate about youth in our community. I have a blended family of 8 kids. I only have 1 left at home. So I've raised a bunch of kids. I've done a whole bunch of stuff. And like we mentioned at the beginning of this, we grew up without cell phones. The kids have cell phones now. They're always on social media. Bullying is real. I don't care what anybody says. Kids' self-esteem, in my opinion, is at an all-time low. And it's not right because every human being has potential. And so I'm having all these thoughts, right, that I think sometimes kids get a bad rap these days. Sometimes they deserve it. I think most of the time they probably don't. And I'm thinking, as a deputy sheriff, I've been bashed, for the last 3 years in office. Our profession has been bashed. Some of it deservedly so, okay? There's things that we can do better. And I know kids, and there is no judgment when I say this, because I include my own kids in this. They're getting their views of my profession for 27 years from a 10-second TikTok video or a Snapchat, right? Bad news, and it probably doesn't tell the whole story, okay? I'm just saying, typically, all right? Not every time, but typically. And so it was on my heart. I want to do something for kids for several different reasons. I do want to bridge the gap. The uniform that we wear, it is a barrier to the youth in our community. It's a barrier to most people, for that matter. I wanted to attempt to break down those barriers, and for the youth in Snohomish County to figure out the cops are people too. We go home with problems. We have problems at homes. We've done stupid stuff as kids. We've all been down this path. We just happen to wear this uniform now. That's our profession. And so I wanted to come up with a youth program to help kids in Snohomish County. And what we ended up calling it was the Sheriff's Lead the Way program. And LEAD stands for Leadership, Encouragement, and Direction for our youth in Snohomish County. And that's exactly what it is. And so we will take kids from 13 to 17 years old from all over the county. I don't say no to anybody. And I don't care if they have been arrested. I don't care if they're in trouble in school. I don't care if they are the good kid, right? We have those in our program. If they feel they can get something from our program, I want them to come in. And what we do is an 8-week program. We get together one night a week for 2 hours, and then we usually add a Saturday morning or afternoon in there, and we do some community service, and there's a point behind all of that. And I just think we're breaking down barriers, and I want the kids to know there's 3 things that really define this program. I want the kids to know there is always hope in the world today. And it is so difficult for the youth to feel that all the time. They're so wound up in their phones and their social media, and if there's bullying going on, they need to see the bigger picture in life, that there is always hope. 2, your mistakes don't define you in life. Your self-esteem is important. We all have our ups and downs, but your mistakes don't define you in life. You can recoup from them, and you can move on. Number 3, we want these young men and women, teenagers, to start thinking about their future. I wasn't good at that, as we talked about at the beginning. I was a stupid kid. All right. I didn't have this in my life. I didn't have someone to grab me and say, think about your future 2 years from now. Think about your future 4 years from now. We're talking about that stuff with these kids. And specifically what we want them to do, we want them to find their own personal passion in life. What are you passionate about? Find what that is and go after it, right? That's what we want them to do. And so that's different for every kid and every individual. So while we do bring in many different options for them, we are never like, this is the path for you. So we partner with the United States Navy. Navy commander that runs the recruiting, not district, the region for Alaska, Oregon, Montana, Washington, and Idaho. So he's high up. All right, like you were enlisted.
Yeah.
Okay, I was enlisted. So being around a Navy commander is like a big deal to me. Yeah. I still call him sir and all that kind of stuff. Okay, he has better things to do with his time, but he shows up when we are in session every week just to help kids in Snohomish County and show them there might be a path for them, you know. And it's so funny because he's usually in his Navy uniform, super official, right? Looks all squared away, and then he starts talking about the stuff that he did as a kid, and it's like, how did you ever make it to the Naval Academy? How did you do that, right? But he did, and I want the kids to hear that. The other thing we did is we don't just bring the kids in and talk at them. That is just not productive with youth. It's just not. Now, I do a lot of talking, granted, I do, but we bring guest speakers in from the community, from all different walks of life, and there's always an agenda that we have that we want to talk to the kids about that night, but it's not just us. It is a heavy police presence and corrections. Shoot, we have our medical personnel from the jail that want to be mentors in the program. Everybody's included. And so that's the kind of thing we do. We house it at the Snow Isle Skill Tech Center on Airport Road in South Everett. There's a reason we do that. One, they're a fantastic partner, and they basically give us free reign of the place, which they've just been so great. And they teach 23 different trades to juniors and seniors in high school in Snohomish County. I can guarantee you this, Eddie, the kids in our program didn't know that before our program. Now they know that. In our last session that we graduated in March, we had 3 kids apply for vocational programs in there. I guarantee you, before our program, it was never on their radar to go to a vocational school in Snohomish County while they're a junior and senior in high school. And so we take one night a week and we give it to Wes Allen, who's the director there, and he takes the kids on a tour of those trades that they teach. And it's not just trades. It's like dental assistant, nursing, there's auto shop, there's auto body, there's welding, there's construction, all these things. And then the teachers of these different programs stay after for our program, and they just give like a 5 to 7 minute brief of the kids about what their program involves. And the cool thing is, not every kid is going to click with every program. It's just not possible. But every now and then, you can see the wheels turning to these kids, and like you can see them thinking about it, like, I might be interested in this. That is what our program is there to do. We are there to plant seeds and hope for kids in our community that might not have either the family structure in place to be able to do it, or a lot of families just want a little extra help these days, man. Because kids are not knocking on our door to come to this program. It is parents dragging their kids to week 1. But I can tell you this, and because we've done 4 sessions now, each session, week 1 is awkward. It is awkward. There's uniforms in the room. There's kids. The parents stay for 40 minutes, and then they're kicked out, and they don't come back till graduation. And then, so we just spend time with the kids. By week 2 or week 3, man, we're like having real conversations with the kids. And they're joking with us, uniform or not. That's what we're trying to do. So thank you for asking that question. I love talking about this stuff. As you can, I get very passionate about this stuff. I'm seeing, when you first start a program like this, and it is unique. I don't know of a police department that's doing it on the West Coast or anywhere for that matter. It's specifically what we're doing is you don't know if it's going to work or not, and you don't know if they're going to show up. Man, kids are showing up. There is a need, and I can tell you, it has not been perfect. But when you're working with youth, it's never going to be perfect, but we are changing kids' lives in Snohomish County, and I'm proud just to be a very small part of it.
That is huge. That is overwhelming. I love the fact that you're having a positive effect on the future of this country.
We're trying.
I don't always look at kids as just kids. A lot of them in this day and age, they have really tough time in life.
Yeah.
With, like you said, bullying, identity issues, not knowing who they want to be when they grow
Yeah.
up, because their version of a father or mother might be very, very harmful and potentially dangerous for them to follow that lead. I'm so thankful that the Snohomish County Sheriff is having a major role in this community in this way. Because when I grew up, I could not even walk down the street, and if a police officer saw me, they would pull over with their lights, almost try to sprint out of their car at me, and give me a sticker or a high five.
Oh, wow.
Which was overwhelming. The Livermore Police Department was really, maybe it was just my bad luck or whatever, but the Livermore Police Department was so into community outreach.
That's good.
And having an effect on others. One of my favorite human beings in the world, Tim Kennedy, said this back in 2020. You cannot be in law enforcement and spend your whole life in an insurgency. You cannot be in your patrol vehicle all the time. You need to get out, interact with the society. Do you think there's a personal benefit or a community benefit from having a strong relationship with law enforcement?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And we have to. I have always thought that was important over my few decades of service. But if ever there was an important time, historically speaking, the last 3 years, man, we have to be out there. And listen, there was some trust broken in 2020. And again, I don't care where you stand politically, not you as a person, anybody, right? We had to reflect internally as now responsible for a very large sheriff's office in the state of Washington. Were we doing the right things, you know? And so I think we did that. I think I've been an advocate for strong public safety since I've been in this position. And I think for the most part, police agencies in Western Washington, and I would say the West Coast, were fairly progressive when it came to policing their communities, right? Doesn't mean there weren't things we did wrong. We're human beings. We screw up. Doesn't mean there weren't things, procedure that we could do better. But I think we did a decent job. But in the last 3 years, man, at a time I think in public safety, especially being a new sheriff and those big colossal 3 things that I had to deal with, I think it would have been okay kind of just to get through my first term in office, the last 3 years, if you will. But I can guarantee you this: we haven't just got through anything, man. We are doing things like the Lead the Way program. We're doing a community advisory board that's never been done at the sheriff's office before. That is important. How does the community want to be policed in Snohomish County? Are we asking that question? We are asking that question because we have a community advisory board. Not only that, we have a partnership in South County with the Mariner Square Business Association that started with a very difficult meeting with business owners that I went to 2.5 years ago. And so uncomfortable meeting, they kind of let me have it, to be honest with you, because they were fed up with crime, right? And so what's important now is what happened from that meeting? Where are we at 2.5 years later? That has grown to over 40 businesses in that geographical area. It has now crossed from on Highway 99 at Airport Road, one side is county and one side is city. We have now crossed over. We have businesses and the Everett Police Department now involved with how we police down in that community. Man, I think we are doing different things. And I say that, I hope I'm answering your question, and that is that relationship important in 2023? Yeah, it is. It is critical to what we do, and it is critical to, we have to always and continually be building the public's trust with what we do. So that is, yeah, and that's how we do it. You can't be in the office all the time. You got to get out and do stuff.
Which is exactly leads me right into my next thing I wanted to say. I think my favorite interaction with you, as far as our lives have ever connected, I read on the internet that you decided that you were going to go ahead and go above and beyond and deploy a spike strip to stop a very, very volatile situation a couple of years ago. And I was laughing and laughing and laughing because it goes against the perspective that we normally have as citizens. We look at people who are quote-unquote labeled politicians, and we think they sit in office, do secret drug deals with power, with the government, and it isn't always like that. There are people who still are leaders in there, and it inspired me to have hope and to really believe that there are still great human beings out there in law enforcement. People like you, Derek Sanders, I can go up and down the list. One of my favorite superstars, all the way up, she used to be my school resource officer. She's now the police chief in Bellingham.
Oh, yeah.
And it blows me away. She was Officer Lewis to me.
Absolutely.
But now she's not. I think there's greatness that we can be driven to when we decide to go against societal norms and continue to be a leader in our own way. What do you think is one of the most important qualities as a leader to have when you get into law enforcement? Because I know that you personally, you lead in your own way, and you also try to inspire others to lead in their own version of what that is.
There's lots of different things. There's lots of different theories to leadership. All I can really tell you is mine, and you kind of already, I think, figured it out. It is when I ran in 19, and I don't mean this in a political way, I kind of ran as the boots on the ground sheriff. Like, I was the graveyard patrol sergeant. I do have different views on leadership than I think probably most sheriffs in current history. I think you do have to get out. And I think you kind of said it in your lead up to this. It's not always popular for number one to go out there and do police work anymore. It's just not. But I have definitely brought that to the sheriff's office. I did deploy spike strips on that call you're talking about. I was in the area. I heard the car chase going on, and I stay equipped with all this stuff. Why on earth would I just drive the other way when I have the chance to impact community safety and help out a little bit? It's not normal for the sheriff to do that. I can guarantee you that. But I'm proud to do that. You know, I've never had an office job before I got this job. Never. Not once in my life. And it is hard for me, to be honest with you. I do not like sitting at a desk doing emails all day. It is not my thing. I have got to get out. And I can't be the judge on whether I'm a good leader or not. You're going to have to do that. The community can do that. And that's fine. But if there's one thing I've done right as sheriff, that is get out of this office and talk with the community. I can absolutely stand by that and back that up every day of the week. And you mentioned politicians, I think, a little bit versus leaders and things like that. If people want to call me a politician, because I did run for office and I'm running again and I did get elected, probably a fair statement. I did run for office. I don't consider myself a politician. The way that we're talking right now, Eddie, is the way I talk behind closed doors. If it's with a member of council, if it's with the Snohomish County executive, I'm the same person behind closed doors that I am out there. I hope I have brought a little bit of authenticity to the sheriff's office in this leadership position. I think people do see that and value. And one of the biggest things for leadership for me, which just historically speaking, we weren't always good at, is just treating your own people right? And so when I came into office, I'm not a big guy on like the whole mission, vision, and value statements, and they get really long-winded, and you read it like, what the heck does that even mean? And no one will ever remember that. And is that just for testing purposes, or do you really mean it, right? So we came in and changed. We got input from our people first and foremost, and then ultimately that kind of stuff falls on my desk. And so we changed I don't even remember what our vision statement it is. You know what it is now? Do the right thing at the right time for the right reasons. Simple, to the point. People can remember it while they're driving around in their patrol car. I hope they're thinking about that before they deal with the people. And if you can do that and hold on to that to the course of your career, is it oversimplistic? Yep. You bet it is. But the cool thing about something simple like that, it applies in every single situation. It can mean different things, but it applies in every situation. So yeah, I'm a different type of leader, I think. I think so. I think I brought some new stuff to the sheriff's office, a unique kind of type of leadership, and I am hands-on. I mean, when we're done here today, I'm going to go meet with a corrections deputy over in the jail about some stuff, and I have an open door policy. A lot of people don't like an open door policy. They don't like that you can just walk in and talk to the number one. And you got to be careful with that sometimes, but I stand by that kind of stuff. So I hope I brought some unique perspectives to leadership. I hope I brought transparency. I am who I am type of guy. I'm willing to answer the tough questions. So anyway, there's a lot to leadership. There's a lot of different perspectives. One other thing I'll say, and I can't take credit for this, it comes from one of our bureau chiefs. You got to be willing to dig the ditch every now and then. You can't dig the ditch every day, but by good Lord, your people got to see you dig the ditch every now and then. And that's incredibly important to the people out there working the streets.
Amen, brother. So one of the things, kind of just wrapping up here, I really wanted to make sure to spotlight this. I see your signs everywhere. I see officers, when I talk to them on the street, talk about you. People know who you are in different counties around Washington State. I think it's important to recognize when someone's on their path. And you spoke about that. You've been doing patrol work for 23 years before you even got into this position. And I know you're up for re-election. There's one thing I wanted to make sure to cover. What is your future vision looking like? What things do you plan on changing? I know that this is something that has to evolve often and openly. Greg Plitt said it best. When you have a system that is workable and can be improved, you might as well have one that is broken to begin with. And because I don't agree with that whole idea that if it's not broke, don't fix it. There's always something new going on. So what's the future look like for you?
Well, it is an election year, like you said, and it is this. The job of sheriff is awesome. I love it. I'm honored to be in this position that the community gave me this chance. But if I'm being real, the politics are horrific. They just are. Even a local race for sheriff, it's just it's been exhausting. I've had an opponent since last year, November of 2022. I refused to campaign in 2022. I promised my family I wouldn't. Okay, so I kicked it off this year, the year of the election. I thought that was appropriate. And so the good thing is that we built a ton of support in the community from amongst the many things that we've already talked about today, and me being front and center. I said this the other day at an event. If you invite me to come and speak to you or a group, I'm accepting as long as we can work out the logistics. I've talked to 5 people in a living room in Stanwood, a homeowners association, and I've talked to 50 Cub Scouts with all their parents down in South Everett, and anything in between, large groups and small. I think that's starting to pay off. I try to stay the political stuff. I really don't care for. I'm in the game though, so I got to play it to a certain extent. And I want to. Right now, I'm the incumbent. When I ran in 19, I was not the incumbent. So I was talking about all the things I wanted to do. And I think I've been able to do that. And I think I can show that. So I am talking more about what we've been able to do in the last 3 years, to be honest with you, than what we're going to bring. I want to continue to bring the Lead the Way program to Snohomish County. I think it would be a sad day if that went away. Our approach to public safety, being a strong advocate at crazy times in Washington State, right? Like they couldn't even decide on a law last week about whether they should criminalize drug use or not, like fentanyl. Right, I'm going to be an advocate that should be against the law, and I'm not afraid to say it. Right, I'm not, and I try to do it the best I can, which I will continue to bring. Which I hope I'm answering your question. I try to bring everybody together. I don't care who you are. I don't care what letter is by your name politically. Like we did a public safety video. It had to do with the Blake decision, which is drugs, and it had to do with police pursuits. Right, and. Real brief, I'll tell you the story behind that is when I go out into all these community meetings that I think I've been doing for 3.5 years, they would ask about the legislation, right? People don't know, rightfully so. They're raising kids, they're taking them to practice, they're going to school, and they're working to make a living for their families, right? Who has time to pay attention to what someone's doing down in Olympia? It is difficult for working folks, okay? So they would ask me, I would tell them, well, this is what's really hindering our ability to be deputy sheriffs or police officers in the state of Washington. I would tell them that we can't chase a car for burglary, right? I would tell them that we can't arrest somebody for possession of drugs, not until the 3rd offense, right? And it's impossible to document that, by the way. But anyway, the people out in the community, again, no political perspectives, just people out in the community can't believe that was happening. So one of the things that when you're deciding who to vote for this November for sheriff, one of the things we've been able to do is I said, okay, we're not doing a very good job of educating people and telling them the kind of the predicament that we're in the state of Washington. So we got people, Republican and Democrat, police leaders, elected officials, police chiefs in Snohomish County. We put together, it was about a 4.5-minute video. Dude, it took 4 months to get everybody to video that and then edit it and all that kind of stuff. And I really wanted it to be bipartisan because I think when one side talks, the other side clues it, whatever. I thought it would be more powerful. And so I really wanted Mayor Cassie Franklin to be in this. She's a Democrat of the largest city of Everett in Snohomish County. She is a strong public safety Democrat, okay? She's a great person to work with. And so I asked her, I said, hey, this is what I'm thinking. We hadn't filmed anything yet. Would you please participate in this? And I think it'd be really powerful for all the reasons I just told you. And she's a blunt person. She flat told me, no way. The politics would be disastrous for me. That was her answer to me. I'm like, okay, you're straight with me. I can respect that answer. And so a few weeks go by. I'm at a different meeting. I'm at a coffee shop, the Loft, right down the street in Everett. And she walks in. I say, hey, Madam Mayor, how are you? And, we do the cordial hellos and all that kind of stuff. I say, hey, remember that conversation we had about 3 weeks ago about the whole video thing that we're trying to do? I'm still putting it together. Would you just consider this, Madam Mayor? Would you just film the video? You say whatever you want to say. That's up to you, right? And then when it's all done, we'll package it, and you will be the first person I go to show this thing to make sure that you're okay with it, right? Because I want the tone to match what you think. It's important to me. And she goes, you know what? I'll do that. And I go, if you don't like it, We'll edit you out. And it's like you never participated in this thing. And I give her a lot of credit for that. I mean, not many elected officials will, at a happenstance meeting, passing in coffee basically, and I kind of laid it out to her. She agreed right then and there, and she stayed true to her word. She did it, and she was the first person I reached out to when we were all done. Again, it took a long time to put together, and she goes, Adam, I don't even need to think about it. I'm in. Publish that thing. It's the right message. It's the truth, and I'm going to take incredible heat politically for partnering with you on this, but I'm in because it's the right thing to do.
I love that.
Yeah. It's good stuff, man. There's good stuff going on in Snohomish County. I'm telling you, it hasn't been easy. We have not been perfect. I have never said that to anybody, but holy smokes, we have moved this agency forward in the last 3.5 years.
Well, I look forward to definitely more than just 3.5 years of that constant progress.
Yeah, we're gonna try.
When we look at our neighbors, I often, when me and my wife look at our neighbors, I often look at them not as who they voted for, not as their skin color, not as who they worship. Not as what breed their dogs are even. I love Connie Corsos, right? I have Huskies. It's okay. I can get down with it. I admire differences. Our differences, our diversity we bring to the table when we have different life experiences. When we come from houses filled with a full parental squad, or houses with broken homes. Even some people grow up without homes. I have friends who I served with in the military that had no home before they joined, and I think that really is what builds a progressive, positive, forward-moving team. We can't have the team method without having everybody be on the same page. And to do that, we have to kind of roll back some of who we are so that we can work together. And that comes with checking your ego. I think it's essential that our elected officials think about doing that often and honestly, because we need it. We need it as human beings. We need it for each other. We need it for our children, for the future of our regions. We cannot keep having dangerous environments. Fentanyl smoke is horribly harmful. Mm-hmm. I work in Seattle every day, and I'm literally breathing and smelling the dangers every day. And I can't say how difficult it is for me to see youth in Seattle collapse. Little girls, because they stepped into an elevator and they walked out, and their lungs are filled with fentanyl smoke, and now they have to be Narcaned. That is a horrible thing, and I think that we can all work together to make sure that doesn't happen here in Snohomish County. And I look forward to that as well. One thing that I just want to wrap up with here is asking you, if there is anybody on this earth, who is it that inspires you? I know that as a leader, it's essential to have people who you aspire to take certain qualities from, certain traits. Who inspires you in your life right now?
That's a good question that I was not prepared for. And a lot of people say stuff like this, so I hope this comes off as authentic. So my wife and I you cannot be in politics without a supportive spouse. Okay, we met a little bit later in life. I think I told you that earlier. And she is my best friend. We do everything together. So she is awesome. Okay, but what has got me personally, and I would say as our marriage together with my wife Jill through the last 3.5 years, it's been a tough time. There's been some controversial things, right, both in public safety and here in Snohomish County, and there's been some rough times politically. Our church got us through the last 3.5 years, our belief in a Savior, Jesus Christ. I know everybody doesn't believe that, and I know sometimes people in elected positions, they just don't want to hear that stuff from us. I respect that a great deal. I do. If it's not for you, I'm cool with that. Like, I'll still sit down. It doesn't matter to me, right? You ask me a question, though, I want to give you an honest answer. Our church family and the good Lord up above is what inspires me and got me through the last 3.5 years, hands down. That is not just a political answer for me. It is true, because the church is shut down in 2020, right? So when they started, which our church was one of them, they just weren't getting together. There was a void for us, and 2020 was the toughest year that I had for many different reasons. And so when the churches started to partially open back up, we found a new church out in Monroe, the Rock Church, Pastor Jeff and Melinda Knight. I'll be honest with you, those two and our church family have been the most inspirational people to me through my relationship with Jesus Christ and our church family.
I love that. I think it's so important what you said as well, as far as being a human being of faith in a time where it's not necessarily a popular thing in politics. You being who you are is definitely an important part of politics. Completely opposed to what anybody else will try to put out as far as energy goes. it's important to be raw and authentic. It's important to show who you are and to be open and honest about people who help you. The Bible is not for everybody. Christianity, the religion, in any religion, might not be for everybody, but it's for you, and that's okay. Everyone can take away something from you relying on a community, a sense of community, a sense of people who share wisdom and knowledge and just love with another human being. Everybody needs love, and I don't think there's ever a bad time to do it. I wanted to say that it's been such an honor and a privilege to sit here with you today. I know you're so busy. You're pulled in a million different directions right now, but you still made time to kind of spotlight and show the things that make up who's behind the badge. I think that's probably going to be the name of this episode. I think I figured it out by now.
Cool.
So behind the badge, I really wanted to know who you were, and I think a lot of my friends in my community want to know as well. So I definitely look forward to the future, and I know exactly who I'm checking the box for this election time as well. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your insight. I love the fact that you're working with the Lead the Way program. The youth are the future, and they need to be known that they are good enough. They are supported, and completely the opposite of whatever life tells them, they can do it, and there is hope. So thank you so much for your time, Sheriff. I appreciate it.
You are very welcome, and thank you for coming up here today.
Excellent. This has been another episode of the Doom Podcast. As always, please head out to our Facebook page, and please, if you like what we do here, why don't you check out the great things they're doing over on the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office page. Make sure to hit that career tabs and investigate what might be going on in your future. There's never a time that is poor to help another human being, and this is a great way to do it. Much love, y'all, and bye-bye.